Okay, welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have the big show today, starting out with asylum-seeking permit, and the city to be able to get those permits into those individual migrants' hands, and will the federal government be helping us? Big issue that's in the news right now. Next up, we're going to be talking about student loans and repayment and what you can do if you have a student loan that you think that you may have to default on. It's important. So stay with us. Today's verdict has so much coming at you right now. All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have with us today Assembly Member Catalina Cruz returning to the show. How are you doing today, Catalina?
David, hope you're doing well.
We're doing well, all good. Certainly, we're going to be discussing today those seeking asylum and their ability to get work permits. But let's take a step back right now. Who are the individuals who have been coming into the city that for our viewers who don't know, who've been coming in?
We have folks who are coming, frankly, from all over the world, but a big portion of them are from Venezuela, are from Mexico, are from Colombia, from Ecuador, the more Latin American South countries. There has been a big portion of folks coming from various African countries, but the majority of them are from Venezuela. These are folks who are escaping poverty, who are escaping a dictatorship, who are trying to find a better, or frankly, the only way that they think that their family can survive. And so they've been coming via mostly Texas into New York.
All right, so they're coming through the southern border. We seem to have a little bit of a discrepancy on how we think migrants should be treated. And I'm talking about New York and Texas. Texas seems to be taking the migrants and sending them up to New York or sending them other places, which we're happy to take them. But why isn't Texas taking part of the migrants? Or why isn't the South taking the migrants?
I mean, I guess that's a question for them, but if I had to guess, it's because they are Republican-controlled anti-immigrant governments, if you will, that forget where many of their own ancestors came from and kind of forget the law, because the law does allow for people to come to our border and ask for asylum. And once they're here, we are by law taking them in and providing them with an opportunity to prove that they in fact qualify for asylum. But merely asking for asylum at the border is legal. And so, these Republican-controlled governments, state governments, are refusing to acknowledge federal law.
All right, so now once they get to New York, I know there's been, much about the Roosevelt Hotel and other places. What happens when they get here? Like, what's the first step?
Go through an intake process. Generally, it's been at the bus station at the Grand Central. Then they are taken, whether it's children or if they're families without children, or if they're adults that are just male or female adults, they're taken to various shelters or temporary housing around the city. Generally, they are provided with medical intake as well as mental health intake. Many of these folks have been subjected to torture, to other types of mental I don't think there's any other word to describe it than torture. And in the process of actually getting here, many of them have lost loved ones along the way. You hear horror stories of women who are raped en route to the United States, or men who are attacked en route to the United States. So it's very important to have their mental health checked, their physical health, of course, and they're provided generally with the opportunity to talk to a lawyer so they can apply for asylum, go through the process, apply for their work permit. And what we're seeing now is many of them are now facing the harsh reality that we are requiring that, when I say we, I mean the city of New York, is going to begin asking them to exit these temporary housing conditions. I think I saw something earlier this week that the mayor is going to want to start doing it as soon as 30 days, so evicting them. And so that's more or less the process.
Where do we expect them to go when they're technically evicted after 30 days? Where can they?
I have no idea. I have no idea. You know, I think it'd be a great question for the mayor to answer. The reality is we don't have the kind of setup to place them in permanent housing yet, and because by law they qualify for work permit but are not being given a work permit in a timely manner, it's not like they have the kind of jobs, if they have a job at all, where they can find sufficient funds to go and rent an apartment themselves. So I'm not sure exactly where we're going to be putting these folks.
Let's talk about work, because I know we want them to get back to work or go to work or find some type of employment. How does that happen? What do we do about that?
Right now, there's a lot of informal work happening. Many of these families are looking at domestic work, construction work, delivery work, often off the books, underpaid, and in conditions that none of us, frankly, would take if we could avoid it. And so the goal is to get them working in industries, because people may not know this, but there is a need for workers around the state in various industries, more so in the service industry, in farms. I was at a farm last week where the farmer was telling me he has an incredibly difficult time getting people, New Yorkers, native New Yorkers, to come and take the jobs. So there is plenty of work, well-paid work, that could help boost the economy of the state of New York. And these are people, these are families who are ready to get to work and who legally have the right to work, have the ability to work, but have not been given that little piece of paper that says you have been permitted to work in the United States, because the federal government is taking too long to do its job.
I don't understand that part. What's the hard part about issuing a work permit? It's only a piece of paper. Is it processing them? What is making it so difficult to get a work permit?
You would think, David, I think it's a lack of putting money into resources into the federal government where it could actually make a change, where it could actually make an impact. So when you come in as an asylum seeker, you have to wait about 180 days in order to apply for a work permit. From the moment you come in, you wait 180 days, you apply for a work permit. Then you have to wait a certain amount of time to get your fingerprints, to get what they're called biometrics, to go through the entire bureaucratic process. It takes another couple of weeks or months. Add to that the wait time for processing. By the time you're counting from the moment the person was able to come in to when they were able to get a work permit, you're looking at upwards of 6 months to almost a year of a wait time, when technically under the law they should only be waiting about 3 months, if that much. And so now what we saw last week was the federal government doing what I think, frankly, it's too little too late, coming in and saying, we're going to put some more workers, we're going to put some more money, and we're going to shorten the wait time. So when you have almost 500,000 people who have come in asking for asylum, and when you have that vast number, an additional 50 workers isn't going to do much, because that's what the federal government announced. I think, they're not prioritizing processing these lawful applications in the way that they need to. And that's why we have a wait time that is frankly ridiculous.
What happens after, let's say, the 30 days and the person doesn't have a job or has no work ability at all? I know some of them are just trying to deliver food. That's a very quick way to make some extra money. And there's an argument that they're taking jobs away from others who were trying to deliver food in the city. But do they end up on the streets, where there's part of that new policy where Mayor Adams is going to sweep the streets? And where do they end up? Like, what happens?
the argument, David, that a New Yorker who has, whether it's a green card, U.S. citizen, or has the ability to legally work, is going to willfully take a job doing delivery work. It's disingenuous for a lot of people to me, because the reality is it's really hard work. It's the kind of work that is underpaid, overworked, stressful. It puts your life in danger because you're out on the streets driving, whether it's a e-bike or an actual bike, or even a scooter, which is a whole other conversation. These are folks who are taking the kinds of jobs that nobody wants, because that's the only thing that they can take. A lot of these folks who are coming in, a lot of these families who are coming in, are simply looking for the opportunity to work. I don't know that they're sitting out there saying, I'm going to go take, the job of half of the New Yorkers who are there. They just want to be able to feed their family. My sense is that the minute that they're able to have a work permit, they're going to look for at least a minimum wage job. They're going to look for the kind of job. You got to remember, a lot of these families don't know English. And so it's going to be very limited what they can get and what they can do. And so they're going to go out and work and make sure that they can feed their family. What's going to happen once these people are evicted is we're going to have a crisis of families out on the street who cannot support themselves, who cannot figure out how to support themselves, because the bureaucracy in the federal government is, let's make sure we get this right. This is a failure by the federal government that we as the state and the city have been left to deal with and to clean up. Is the federal government for decades has been more worried about fighting among themselves and Republicans and Democrats than actually getting work done.
Well, I guess that leads me to pretty much my last question. Where are we heading? If I had you on, let's say in 6 months to a year, what do you think the situation is going to be? If you had a crystal ball.
I would like to think that we are headed to a situation where we have families who are employed, who have found housing, who have found the pathway to that American dream they've been searching for. But unless we have a better response than only giving work permits to our Venezuelan migrants, that's not going to happen. What the federal government did a week ago of announcing work permits for, not work permits, TPS, which comes with a work permit for Venezuelan migrants, only touches the tip of the iceberg on this gigantic problem. We have a lot of work to do, and we should be ready to go and do it. I have introduced legislation that looks to actually create work permits much faster at the state level. The way I look at this is, if the federal government is failing us, it is an opportunity for us as the state to get to work and to do the job that they have refused to do because they're more interested in the politics and the people.
Well said. And hopefully I'm going to hold you to it, because I am going to have you on within the next 6 months to a year. And I want to bring this up and see where we are. But I want to thank you very much for coming on, Assembly Member.
I mean, I look forward to talking to you in 6 months and hopefully having a better outlook for our migrants.
Fair enough. All right. Stay with us. Today's Verdict has so much more coming up right after this.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, we love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Okay, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have with us today Aisha Baruni, a student loan staff attorney with Brooklyn Legal Services. Aisha, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. It's a pleasure. But before we get there, how is everyone at Brooklyn Legal Services? We love having them. Are they working hard and getting ready for the fall weather?
Yes, we're working hard, getting ready for fall.
Okay, let's get right into some student loans and loan repayments. It's been a tough, couple of weeks now for students who now have to start repaying their loans once again. What's the feeling around all these students right now? Is there fear? Is there anger? What do you hear?
What I hear most from student loan borrowers is a lot of confusion. Their student loans are in the news a lot. Folks with federal student loans have not had to make payments for 3.5 years because of the COVID payment pause. And now with repayment starting in October, there's a lot of confusion. The Department of Education has a lot of great programs to help student loan borrowers, but there's a lot of confusion about what those programs are, whether people are going to be able to afford to make their payments again, even confusion around what those payments will be.
All right, let's start from the beginning. If you take a loan or you were able to get a loan for your education, what are the terms? In other words, can you stall in terms of paying? Is there a way to declare bankruptcy? Like, what are the general rules around student loans? If we could just refresh the viewer's memory, if we could.
Sure. So with student loans, I'll just start off with saying bankruptcy is it's challenging to discharge federal student loans in bankruptcy or any student loans in bankruptcy. So for the most part, when people take out student loans, they are expected to repay them. But what a lot of people don't know is that many loans are eligible for what's called an income-driven repayment plan. So that means that it's possible to get a repayment plan that's based on your income. So if you have a low income or you're going through a time with a loss of job, you can have your payment reduced, which is really huge for a lot of people and information that a lot of folks don't know. And so that's one of the biggest things I want people to know is that, it's possible to choose to repay your student loans over a fixed period of time. But for other folks, an income-driven repayment plan is a great option for them. And I said before that discharging your student loans in bankruptcy is very challenging, but there are other programs that the Department of Education has available for people. For example, for folks who are disabled, there are programs to help people discharge their student loans. For people who work in public service for 10 years, there's a way to discharge the remainder of their student loans after 10 years. So there are a lot of programs and opportunities for people. And what we want to do is help counsel folks on a one-on-one basis about their individual circumstances to help them come up with the best plan that works for them.
What if you took out the monies for school, but you left school before you were able to get that degree? Is there any consideration by the government for that or no?
In a limited circumstance, there is a program to assist people with discharging their loans if there was some sort of bad action on the part of the school. So typically, if you take out the loan, even if you don't finish school, get the degree or the certificate or finish the course of study, you are expected to repay the loan. But there are some circumstances where there are some schools that have really deceived students about the education that they're providing and where students haven't really gotten a valuable education. And there is a program to assist borrowers in looking to cancel those student loans there.
All right, so let's get to the magic question. Now you can't pay your student loan back. You just don't have the money. What happens? What do you do?
Yeah.
Are you getting calls? I hear you get calls from debt collection services. What exactly starts to happen once you stop paying?
So if you have federal student loans, and that's what we're focusing on a lot right now
Yeah.
because it's federal student loans that are repayment is starting next month. If you communicate with your servicer and you let them know, I have no income, I cannot make a payment on my student loans, you should be able to apply for an income-driven repayment plan, and you could get a payment of $0 a month. So you could be current on your loan, not having to make a payment if that's what your income necessitates. There are people who have fallen behind on their loans before COVID because in the last 3 years, payments haven't been required on motor loans. And so for folks who fell behind on their student loans before COVID and weren't making payments, you should be hearing from your servicer, the Department of Education, about a program called Fresh Start to bring your loan out of default so that you're not seeing that show up as negative on your credit report, so that you're able to get into a position to try to make payments again. So what we really encourage people is if you're having a hard time paying your student loans, talk to an advocate from Brooklyn Legal Services or EdCap, the Education Debt Consumer Advocacy Project, and talk with us about what's going on so we can help you explore your options.
Let's talk about those credit reports, because I don't think a lot of the students really understand what that means in terms of bad credit. They just think it's something that just sounds bad. But what happens when you end up having the 3 credit agencies basically giving you a negative rating or a very poor rating?
So, having debt that's not in good standing, so it could be student loan debt or other debt that you're made payments on and payments were due, can impact your ability to take out other
And that's
loans.
credit cards, and that's anything else. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that, but in the future, they may want to apply for a bank card or a debit card or a credit card or anything like that. Am I correct? And that's really where they have the problems.
That's right. I mean, so, what we find is if people are having trouble making their student loans, they're probably also having trouble with other bills. And so their credit rating, and they may have other debts that are behind on their credit report, that they're being reported in a negative way on their credit report. And so what we're sort of really focusing on is not necessarily credit repair, because the improvement to your credit will come once you're able to get into a repayment plan or a discharge plan or something that works for you in your individual circumstances. The default issue that I mentioned before, that can have a strong negative impact on your credit. And that's why it's so great that the Department of Education has this Fresh Start program right now to help people get out of default without having to make a payment, to get out of default. You're out of default, and then you can apply for an income-driven repayment plan payment that will be based on your income. And that should have immediate credit repair benefits.
I know there's been some talk about loan forgiveness. It's been all over the news. The Biden administration probably tried to push something through. The Supreme Court overturned. What are your thoughts on loan forgiveness? Does it look like it's happening, or is that dead in the water?
So the Department of Education, the federal government, actually has a number of loan forgiveness programs that are already in effect. So it is true that the Biden administration created a special one-time debt cancellation program that the Supreme Court struck down, but the Department of Education actually has a number of loan forgiveness programs already in effect. So one is the income-driven repayment forgiveness plan. I've mentioned a few times that it's possible for most loans to apply for a repayment plan that's based on your income. And if you make your payment under that plan for 20 or 25 years, the remainder of your debt will be forgiven. For public service loan forgiveness, for people who are working in nonprofits or government agencies, if you make a payment for 10 years and you get documentation of all of that, then the remainder of your debt will be forgiven. For folks who are disabled and unable to work and earn a wage to support themselves, they can get their debt discharged. So there are a number of different discharge and loan cancellation programs already in effect, and the Biden administration is working to help people know about and apply for them. And I encourage people to talk with an advocate either at Brooklyn Legal Services or in the EdCap network to find out if there are any programs that you might be eligible for, or what you need to do to get your loans in the right position to work toward eligibility for those programs.
And how do they reach out to Brooklyn Legal Services? Is it by
So-
phone? Is it website, something else?
Yeah, so Brooklyn Legal Services, we're part of Legal Services NYC, which is a citywide legal services network. And our access line number is 917-661-4500. That's Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 4 p.m. Again, that number is 917-661-4500. And Brooklyn Legal Services is part of the EdCap network, the Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program. And the helpline, folks can also reach out to the helpline, is 888-614-5004. That's 888-614-5004. And people can also email EdCap at edcap@cssny.com. And our services are totally free.
Finally, last thought. Where do we think we're heading with respect to this particular issue? Are we becoming more forgiving? There may be a Republican administration that comes in federally. What are your thoughts?
I think the next year is going to be a very challenging year with, over 40 million Americans returning to repaying federal student loans. And I think it's going to be a very challenging year. And I'm hopeful that it'll be a year where student loan assistance for borrowers becomes a strong priority.
All right, Ayusha Baruni, I want to thank you very much for coming on. Give us some very important information, some tips. Certainly, if you have a student loan and you may unfortunately have to default or think about it, and we'd love you to 6 months in the year so we could see where things stand. Is that
would be
okay?
great. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Okay, stay with us. Today's verdict has so much more right after this.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Oh, how did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Hey, boss. Okay.
I said I'm fine.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
All right, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us, and of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you have an issue or a topic you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to email me at davidlesh@bronxnet.org. Till the next time, know the issues, reach the verdict. See you in 2 weeks.